to the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway. This letter comes to you as part of Berkshire's annual report. As a public company, we are required to periodically tell you many specific facts and figures. Report, however, implies a greater responsibility. In addition to the mandated data, we believe we owe you additional commentary about what you own and how we think. Our goal is to communicate with you in a manner that we would wish you to use if our positions were reversed. That is, if you were Berkshire's CEO while I and my family were passive investors trusting you with our savings. This approach leads us to an annual recitation of both good and bad developments at the many businesses you indirectly own through your Berkshire shares. When discussing problems at specific subsidiaries, we do, however, try to follow the advice Tom Murphy gave to me 60 years ago: praise by name, criticize by category. Mistakes. Yes, we make them at Berkshire. Sometimes I've made mistakes in assessing the future economics of a business I've purchased for Berkshire, each a case of capital allocation gone wrong. That happens with both judgments about marketable equities. We view these as partial ownership of businesses and the 100% acquisitions of companies. At other times, I've made mistakes when assessing the abilities or fidelity of the managers Berkshire is hiring. The fidelity disappointments can hurt beyond their financial impact, a pain that can approach that of a failed marriage. A decent batting average in personnel decisions is all that can be hoped for. The cardinal sin is delaying the correction of mistakes, or what Charlie Munger called thumb-sucking. Problems, he would tell me, cannot be wished away. They require action, however uncomfortable that may be. During the 2019-2023 period, I have used the words mistake or error 16 times in my letters to you. Many other huge companies have never used either word over that span. Amazon, I should acknowledge, made some brutally candid observations in its 2021 letter. Elsewhere, it has generally been happy talk and pictures. I have also been a director of large public companies at which mistake or wrong were forbidden words at board meetings or analyst calls. That taboo implying managerial perfection always made me nervous, though at times there could be legal issues that make limited discussion advisable. We live in a very litigious society. At 94, it won't be long before Greg Abel replaces me as CEO and will be writing the annual letters. Greg shares the Berkshire creed that a report is what a Berkshire CEO annually owes to owners. And he also understands that if you start fooling your shareholders, you will soon believe your own baloney and be fooling yourself as well. Pete Legal, one of a kind. Let me pause to tell you the remarkable story of Pete Legal, a man unknown to most Berkshire shareholders, but one who contributed many billions to their aggregate wealth. Pete died in November, still working at 80. I first heard of Forest River, the Indiana company Pete founded and managed, on June 21, 2005. On that day, I received a letter from an intermediary detailing relevant data about the company, a recreational vehicle, RV, manufacturer. The writer said that Pete, the 100% owner of Forest River, specifically wanted to sell to Berkshire. He also told me the price that Pete expected to receive. I liked this no-nonsense approach. I did some checking with RV dealers, liked what I learned, and arranged a June 28th meeting in Omaha. Pete brought along his wife, Sharon, and daughter, Lisa. When we met, Pete assured me that he wanted to keep running the business, but would feel more comfortable if he could assure financial security for his family. Pete next mentioned that he owned some real estate that was leased to Forest River and had not been covered in the June 21st letter. Within a few minutes, we arrived at a price for those assets, as I expressed no need for appraisal by Berkshire but would simply accept his valuation. Then we arrived at the other point that needed clarity. I asked Pete what his compensation should be, adding that whatever he said I would accept. This, I should add, is not an approach I recommend for general use. Pete paused as his wife, daughter, and I leaned forward. Then he surprised us. Well, I looked at Berkshire's proxy statement, and I wouldn't want to make more than my boss, so pay me $100,000 per year. After I picked myself off the floor, Pete added, but we will earn X, he named a number, this year, and I would like an annual bonus of 10% of any earnings above what the company is now delivering. I replied, "Okay, Pete, but if Forest River makes any significant acquisitions, we will make an appropriate adjustment for the additional capital thus employed." I didn't define appropriate or significant, but those vague terms never caused a problem. The four of us then went to dinner at Omaha's Happy Hollow Club and lived happily ever after. During the next 19 years, Pete shot the lights out. No competitor came close to his performance. Every company doesn't have an easy-to-understand business, and there are very few owners or managers like Pete. And, of course, I expect to make my share of mistakes about the businesses Berkshire buys, and sometimes err in evaluating the sort of person with whom I'm dealing. But I've also had many pleasant surprises in both the potential of the business as well as the ability and fidelity of the manager. And our experience is that a single winning decision can make a breathtaking difference over time. Think Geico as a business decision, Ajit Jain as a managerial decision, and my luck in finding Charlie Munger as a one-of-a-kind partner, personal advisor, and steadfast friend. Mistakes fade away. Winners can forever blossom. One further point in our CEO selections, I never look at where a candidate has gone to school. Never. Of course, there are great managers who attended the most famous schools. But there are plenty such as Pete who may have benefited by attending a less prestigious institution or even by not bothering to finish school. Look at my friend Bill Gates, who decided that it was far more important to get underway in an exploding industry that would change the world than it was to stick around for a parchment that he could hang on the wall. Read his new book, Source Code. Not long ago, I met, by phone, Jessica Tunkel, whose step-grandfather, Ben Rossner, long ago ran a business for Charlie and me. Ben was a retailing genius, and in preparing for this report, I checked with Jessica to confirm Ben's schooling, which I remembered as limited. Jessica's reply, Ben never went past 6th grade. I was lucky enough to get an education at 3 fine universities, and I avidly believe in lifelong learning. I've observed, however, that a very large portion of business talent is innate with nature's swamping nurture. Pete Legal was a natural. Last year's performance. In 2024, Berkshire did better than I expected, though 53% of our 189 operating businesses reported a decline in earnings. We were aided by a predictable large gain in investment income as Treasury bill yields improved, and we substantially increased our holdings of these highly liquid short-term securities. Our insurance business also delivered a major increase in earnings, led by the performance of Geico. In 5 years, Todd Combs has reshaped Geico in a major way, increasing efficiency and bringing underwriting practices up to date. Geico was a long-held gem that needed major repolishing, and Todd has worked tirelessly in getting the job done. Though not yet complete, the 2024 improvement was spectacular. In general, property casualty, P/C, insurance pricing strengthened during 2024, reflecting a major increase in damage from convective storms. Climate change may have been announcing its arrival. However, no monster event occurred during 2024. Someday, any day, a truly staggering insurance loss will occur, and there is no guarantee that there will be only one per annum. The P/C business is so central to Berkshire that it warrants a further discussion that appears later in this letter. Berkshire's railroad and utility operations, our 2 largest businesses outside of insurance, improved their aggregate earnings. Both, however, have much left to accomplish. Late in the year, we increased our ownership of the utility operation from about 92% to 100% at a cost of roughly $3.9 billion, of which $2.9 billion was paid in cash with a balance in Berkshire B shares. All told, we recorded operating earnings of $47.4 billion in 2024. We regularly, endlessly, some readers may groan, emphasize this measure rather than the GAAP-mandated earnings that are reported on page K, 68. Our measure excludes capital gains or losses on the stocks and bonds we own, whether realized or unrealized. Over time, we think it highly likely that gains will prevail. Why else would we buy these securities? Though the year-by-year numbers will swing wildly and unpredictably. Our horizon for such commitments is almost always far longer than a single year. In many, our thinking involves decades. These long-termers are the purchases that sometimes make the cash register ring like church bells. Here's a breakdown of the 2023 to 24 earnings as we see them. All calculations are after depreciation, amortization, and income tax. EBITDA, a flawed favorite of Wall Street, is not for us. Insurance underwriting, $9,020 million for 2024 and $5,428 million for 2023. Insurance investment income, $13,670 million for 2024 and $9,567 million for 2023. BNSF, $5,031 million for 2024 and $5,087 million for 2023. Berkshire Hathaway Energy, $3,730 million for 2024 and $2,331 million for 2023. Other controlled businesses, $13,072 million for 2024 and $13,362 million for 2023. Non-controlled businesses, $1,519 million for 2024 and $1,750 million for 2023. Other, $1,395 million for 2024 and negative $175 million for 2023. Operating earnings, $47,437 million for 2024 and $37,350 million for 2023. Surprise, surprise. An important American record is smashed. 60 years ago, present management took control of Berkshire. That move was a mistake, my mistake, and one that plagued us for 2 decades. Charlie, I should emphasize, spotted my obvious error immediately. Though the price I paid for Berkshire looked cheap, its business, a large northern textile operation, was headed for extinction. The U.S. Treasury, of all places, had already received silent warnings of Berkshire's destiny. In 1965, the company did not pay a dime of income tax, an embarrassment that had generally prevailed at the company for a decade. That sort of economic behavior may be understandable for glamorous startups, but it's a blinking yellow light when it happens at a venerable pillar of American industry. Berkshire was headed for the ash can. Fast forward 60 years and imagine the surprise at the Treasury when that same company, still operating under the name of Berkshire Hathaway, paid far more in corporate income tax than the U.S. government had ever received from any company, even the American tech titans that commanded market values in the trillions. To be precise, Berkshire last year made 4 payments to the IRS that totaled $26.8 billion. That's about 5% of what all of corporate America paid. In addition, we paid sizable amounts for income taxes to foreign governments and to 44 states. Note one crucial factor allowing this record-shattering payment. Berkshire shareholders during the same 1965 to 2024 period received only one cash dividend. On January 3, 1967, we disbursed our sole payment, $101,755 or 10 cents per share. I can't remember why I suggested this action to Berkshire's board of directors. Now it seems like a bad dream. For 60 years, Berkshire shareholders endorsed continuous reinvestment, and that enabled the company to build its taxable income. Cash income tax payments to the U.S. Treasury, minuscule in the first decade, now aggregate more than $101 billion, and counting. Huge numbers can be hard to visualize. Let me recast the $26.8 billion that we paid last year. If Berkshire had sent the Treasury a $1 million check every 20 minutes throughout all of 2024, visualize 366 days and nights because 2024 was a leap year, we still would have owed the federal government a significant sum at year-end. Indeed, it would be well into January before the Treasury would tell us that we could take a short breather, get some sleep, and prepare for our 2025 tax payments. Where your money is. Berkshire's equity activity is ambidextrous. In one hand, we own control of many businesses, holding at least 80% of investees' shares. Generally, we own 100%. These 189 subsidiaries have similarities to marketable common stocks, but are far from identical. The collection is worth many hundreds of billions and includes a few rare gems, many good but far from fabulous businesses, and some laggards that have been disappointments. We own nothing that is a major drag, but we have a number that I should not have purchased. In the other hand, we own a small percentage of a dozen or so very large and highly profitable businesses with household names such as Apple, American Express, Coca-Cola, and Moody's. Many of these companies earn very high returns on the net tangible equity required for their operations. At year-end, our partial ownership holdings were valued at $272 billion. Understandably, really outstanding businesses are very seldom offered in their entirety, but small fractions of these gems can be purchased Monday through Friday on Wall Street, and very occasionally they sell at bargain prices. We are impartial in our choice of equity vehicles, investing in either variety based upon where we can best deploy your and my family's savings. Often, nothing looks compelling. Very infrequently, we find ourselves knee-deep in opportunities. Greg has vividly shown his ability to act at such times as did Charlie. With marketable equities, it is easier to change course when I make a mistake. Berkshire's present size, it should be underscored, diminishes this valuable option. We can't come and go on a dime. Sometimes a year or more is required to establish or divest an investment. Additionally, with ownership of minority positions, we can't change management if that action is needed or control what is done with capital flows if we are unhappy with the decisions being made. With controlled companies, we can dictate these decisions, but we have far less flexibility in the disposition of mistakes. In reality, Berkshire almost never sells controlled businesses unless we face what we believe to be unending problems. An offset is that some business owners seek out Berkshire because of our steadfast behavior. Occasionally, that can be a decided plus for us. Despite what some commentators currently view as an extraordinary cash position at Berkshire, the great majority of your money remains in equities. That preference won't change. While our ownership in marketable equities moved downward last year from $354 billion to $272 billion, the value of our non-quoted controlled equities increased somewhat and remains far greater than the value of the marketable portfolio. Berkshire shareholders can rest assured that we will forever deploy a substantial majority of their money in equities, mostly American equities, although many of these will have international operations of significance. Berkshire will never prefer ownership of cash-equivalent assets over the ownership of good businesses, whether controlled or only partially owned. Paper money can see its value evaporate if fiscal folly prevails. In some countries, this reckless practice has become habitual, and in our country's short history, the U.S. has come close to the edge. Fixed coupon bonds provide no protection against runaway currency. Businesses, as well as individuals with desired talents, however, will usually find a way to cope with monetary instability as long as their goods or services are desired by the country's citizenry. So too with personal skills. Lacking such assets as athletic excellence, a wonderful voice, medical or legal skills, or for that matter, any special talents, I have had to rely on equities throughout my life. In effect, I have depended on the success of American businesses, and I will continue to do so.